All right, good morning, guys. It is Saturday, not Sunday. It is Saturday, December the 19th, and this is our third installment of the Notary Nerds Book Club. Of course, if you don't know by now, we are reading Notary Best Practices by Professor Michael Closen. He is the country's leading foremost expert on notarial law. And if you are out here in these streets doing notarizations for money, I would highly recommend that you invest $30 in this book. If you don't, then I just don't even know what to tell you. Not only do you need that book, we were just talking, this book, your state primer, is also a good investment. So if you don't have it, you need to get it. So let's get going. So we did chapters 7 through 10 from last week. That was our assignment for this week. And like Damien said, these are meaty chapters. I get even more, the more I read this book, the more I am hesitant to do just any signing. Of course, my state law requires that I not refuse the signing. So I tend to, as I read this book, want to kind of stay back a little bit until I get as comfortable as I need to get before putting my marketing out there full force. What do you guys think? What was your take on just a quick summary of the reading?
So I didn't know about the notary certificates.
Right.
And it looks like the notary that's the primary document that they control, is the notary certificate, whereas the document signer primarily controls the transactional document. And so we're not supposed to write on the transactional document, but we can, of course, on the certificate. So my question is, with the certificates, and I was talking to another guy at my church who's a notary, who's been notarized and stuff. How do you get the notary certificates? I think he said he downloaded information or documents from NNA. Because now, like you said, as in reading these chapters, I'm like, dog, I need to just get all this information. Even in another chapter, we'll talk about it, but I want to get I'm thinking about getting another seal.
Yeah, I have to.
Another conversation.
Exactly. Okay, yes, that is so, I cannot wait till we get to that chapter. But back on the certificate piece, he basically makes it clear that that certificate for the notary is your situation. That is as the public official who has been commissioned to conduct that notarial ceremony, nobody can fill in the blanks in your notarial certificate. Nobody can play around with that notarial certificate. If that notarial certificate's verbiage is not compliant with your state's law, then you as the notary can mark through and make the correction with a single line and an initial and date. Because if you don't, then what you're doing is you're messing up the situation. I don't even want to go into the whole legal aspect because I'm not a lawyer. But at the end of the day, the responsibility is on the notary public. That's the takeaway here, is that when you're doing a loan signing and the property may be from a different in a different state, let's just say, and the lender may be in a different state, and the signing and the signer may be in the state that you're in. If that lender's documents include notarial certificates that verbiage is specific to their state and not your state, that could be problematic. It could be even more problematic if you don't even know it. You know what I'm saying? So, okay. Anybody, we got some more people entering. Let's run down the summaries. Number 1, the notary should understand the purpose of the notarial certificate is to record and certify the steps that have been taken in performing the notarization. Anybody have anything in particular on that summary from the chapter? Anybody? That was pretty straightforward, though. The next one is the notary should complete a certificate of notarization for each document notarization to create a written record of the notarization and to provide a symbol of officiality. We kind of already know that. The notary should not sign or affix an official seal impression on a notarial certificate prior to a document notarization ceremony. Hello. 13 loan signings a day. How are they doing them? 20 loan signings a day. How are they doing them? Look, guys, I get it. I get the money grab. I get it. I get the efficiency. I get being able to go from appointment to appointment in an hour. I get it. But if you are doing anything to that notarial certificate to make your signings go smoother, and if that involves you pre-stamping those certificates, stop. Just stop doing it right now. Because if something goes left, those documents aren't necessarily used and your stamps are already all over the place, then what? You got an open door room for fraud, because it just could be bad. What else do you guys want to add to that? Anybody? Y'all aren't gonna let me talk all day, because I'm not gonna, y'all, you know, there we go. There, I can see everybody. Hey. Damien, what do you have to add to that? I know you got something.
Yeah, I'm always going back and skimming that section to kind of see what was in there. I know for me, I just like how they speak about the specific use of the embosser and the seal in this section. Um, just because for me, being brand new, commission in July, I haven't gotten out here. That's been one of my hesitations about, exactly how to use these equipment. I know there's a specific way to use it besides just plopping it anywhere on the sheet of page, so
Right.
I like the map that they kind of, that he kind of spells out for you of how to accurately use it, emboss the last 2 and 3 pages together and all that stuff kind of tickled my fancy when I was like, oh, okay, that's how it gave me a visual.
Right. Same here, because I didn't even know that we could do that. I didn't even know that we could have the two, the embosser and the seal. But he makes it seem as if the prudent notary would, because the prudent notary is making sure that they're trying to prevent fraud at every turn.
So it sounds like what he was saying is to use both the ink impression and the embosser?
I mean,
for each and every act or something?
That's what that's what I picked up. He made it seem as if by doing so that just shows that notary is just really trying to make sure that their fraud is not possible. And if your state doesn't prohibit it, then he makes it seem as if it's a good practice. So, I didn't even know about the embosser. I knew, I seen a picture of it, when I was getting my graphic done. I saw somebody, he used it in my logo. I was like, what is that? And somebody explained it was an embosser. But I just have my stamps, which we're going to talk about here in the next one. But are you thinking about maybe getting one? Because I actually was after I read that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because in July I went ahead and went gung ho and went ahead and got my ink seal, of course. And the only reason I didn't get my embosser at the time was I think I don't know, I think I didn't have the money at the time. I don't know, but I definitely plan to definitely get it and to use it. I plan to get it anyway, but I definitely plan to get it and use it simultaneously with my ink stamp for my practice.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna make the investment, and it's important to even just, because my whole thing is the reverse mortgages and then commercial. And the reason that I think it's going to be important for me to get the embosser before I embark upon the commercial is because just the nature of the documents are going to be way more complex. There's going to be a lot more money on the line, and there's
that makes sense.
So for my general notary work, am I concerned about using an embosser? Probably not. But when I start doing, K1 swap agreements, commercial leases, and all of these different types of things, oh my. Yeah.
Has anybody used an embosser in this book club? I'm just curious.
I don't, but after reading that section, I'm going to get one. And also, he was talking about, like, most states won't allow you to have more than 2 notary seals. So I don't know how, because right now I'm working from home, right? So I have my seal and everything here. But you know, when I go back to work or however that's going to happen, I don't know if we're going to physically go back in the office or not, but I should have one there. So if I buy an embosser, that's like me having 3 seals. So that might present a problem, but I'm going to get the embosser. Back to your other point, Monica, about after reading all this information, I don't understand how people are having the notarial ceremony so quickly, like, because when you look at everything that you have to do, like have those certificates, I'm like, oh, that's like a lot of time.
Right. Yeah, there's no, to me, so here's my thing. I think that the reason, like many of you, the reason I got into this is because I saw the YouTube videos of all the people making a lot of money. And so when that's your draw, you don't really stop and think about these things unless you're intentional about it and you seek out this information. And we hadn't sought this information out, we would have never been, we would have been none the wiser. It would have been about how can I be the most efficient in conducting as many signings as possible. And it would seem logical that, okay, I'm going to do this signing. Let me pre-prepare some of this stuff. Well, and I've heard of notaries that have heard of notaries who do that. And just, the way the trend is in this industry right now, it's about not necessarily making all the money, but it's being presented as a business opportunity. And in business, you have to have certain efficiencies. And my concern, especially after reading these last 3 chapters, is that culture of thought for those who aren't going to go seek out the real, true way to be a good notary is very dangerous. That culture of, this is a small business, I'm going to go out and sign up with as many signing services as possible. I'm going to go out and get my signings down to an hour appointment. Nowhere in that thought process is it mentioned about being a good notary or having those skills of being a good notary. So I think it's very important that the industry tone down a little bit on the entrepreneurship aspect and tone up a little bit more on the basic notarization skills required to be a good entrepreneur. Does anybody second that or have anything to say on that?
I'm with you. I just, the impression I get, I want to jump out there, but I personally don't have the confidence, and so that's why I'm taking the time to learn. But
Right.
I'm kind of, it's interesting to me how when I'm in some of the groups on Facebook, how many of the people seem to just kind of be jumping out there, and then they're going into the Facebook groups asking quickly, okay, how do I do this procedure? You know
Exactly.
what I mean? Like, there's been no training. Doesn't seem like they know procedure. They're going kind of off the cuff as they, okay, well, let me hurry up and I'm at this appointment. Let me go ahead and go in the Facebook group. How do I do this? And then they go in and do that, get the money. And then, there's no preparation, it seems like, to me.
Right. And I think that's because the culture, the YouTube culture of the signing opportunity as an entrepreneurial pursuit is focused on all those other things, and I just think it needs to be a situation where, because most people aren't going to be like, look how many of us are on this call, right?
Right.
There are 5 of us. There's 1,800 people in the group, and there's 5 people on this call. So that just is a reflection of everybody isn't going to go do it on their own. So at some point, the industry at large has to be, I don't know. I just see that. I see a trend of, I just get more and more nervous the more I read this book about people, the screenshots they put up and how do you do this?
Yes.
It's just like.
Yes. Because some of the questions seem pretty basic. Seem like if they
Right.
had read this book or gone through a training, they would know. Like I don't even know anything, but some of the stuff they ask, I know. It's like the venue questions. Like when they ask questions about venue and stuff, it's like I know that. Like what? And you're getting and then you talk about getting all this 150, 200, and 300. Man, I could get your money. I'd be mad sitting there watching them collect that money.
Right. which is serving its purpose, because now you see that your confidence is building because your knowledge base is growing, and you can see visually that some folks is out there doing it and don't know what they're doing.
Not at all.
So, okay, one thing I wanted to point out.
And now, could I interject? Now, is it possible to have complete a signing in an hour? Is that possible?
I have heard yes.
I guess it depends on how long your contract, how many pages you have your contract. My first contract was like 210 pages. I did not finish in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I did not finish in an hour. I took my time. I didn't want to miss anything. You know, it was like I don't know, it was almost an hour. It was an hour and like 40 minutes. You know, but I wasn't complaining. It was my first signing.
How much did you get on that first sign? Who is it? Who is this I'm talking to, by the way?
I'm sorry, this is Sunset Ray.
Hey, Sunset Ray. How much did you get for that first signing? Do you remember?
It was a Texas cash out, and I got $140.
That ain't bad for an hour and a half.
Right.
You know, most people don't make that kind of money hourly on the job, so I'm still not mad at that. But one thing I wanted to point out in Chapter 7, even though the notarial certificate is the notary's, okay, wait a minute. It should be emphasized that the notarial certificate is a separate document unto itself. So I think a lot of times when we talk about the certificate, we think of the actual loose jurat or acknowledgement. And Damien, to your point, you can order your state's certificates from the NNA's website. That's what I did. It came on a pad. And then that's also going to help you become familiar with what your state certificate's verbiage needs to say. But for those of you who are going to be watching this later on, your notarial certificate, even though it appears at the end of a transactional document, it is still considered a separate certificate. Even though it's not loose, it's its own entity, and it's an entity that you're responsible for. So I just wanted to point that out. Let's move on through the chapter. The notary should complete a certificate of notarization for each document notarization to create a written record. So we know that. But one thing I had the other day was a signing that a gentleman had 4 originals, and he wanted each of them notarized. And immediately I looked at my journal and was like, whoa, how many times am I going to make this annotation in my journal? And my gut told me to make 1 journal entry and then indicate in that journal entry that I did it 4 times. And I was pleasantly surprised when I read through the chapter and realized I was right. And I was like, yes. Has anybody else run into that? Or do you guys have in your state a requirement to do it differently?
No.
Okay. Awesome. Let's see here. Oh, order of operations. Y'all remember PEMDAS for math? You know, parentheses, exponents, whatever.
That's right. That's right.
We've got an order of operations for completing a ceremony. Apparently it's journal entry first, then notarial certificate. Had anybody been doing it differently? Anybody have any comments on that?
I was doing it differently.
I was doing it in reverse.
Yep.
And which section are you referencing, Monica?
So we're on page 85 now, 7.4. And it just basically says the notary should complete the notarial certificate after creating the journal entry for the notarization. And there's a few reasons for this. I mean, the one he lists is the, hold on, what did he say specifically? He doesn't want you to get in a situation where the signer walks away and you don't have that record. That was one of the things that I pulled. Anybody else pull anything else as far as from Professor Closon's reasoning?
Mm-mm.
That was the main thing. He says, if for any reason the notarization must be refused by the notary, the basic information needed to record the refusal in the journal will already have been obtained and recorded. Another reason is, he talks about it here in a second, is the comparison of the signatures. You need at least 3 signature comparisons when you're conducting a notarization. And typically that's going to come with a present signature comparison, mind you. So in the case of an acknowledgement, as we learned last call, that paper may already have been signed. So that's not a present signature. You don't know, you don't get to see the fluidity of the hand movement, right? So if that's the case, you definitely want a present signature in your ceremony. And really the only place you're going to get that is going to be on that journal entry, because the other signature that you're supposed to compare to is the signature on the ID, which of course is not a present signature, meaning it was already done before it came to you.
Right.
So that makes that journal entry signature happening first key, because now I can see if you're flowing with it. I can see if you stopping and jerking around with it. I can see a whole bunch of things. So especially in the case of an acknowledgement, guys, because as we learned, an acknowledgement can already be signed before you get to it, before you conduct your part of the ceremony. Let's see here. He's talked a little bit about the notary should complete a notarial certificate to facilitate the cross-border recognition of the notarization in other states, territories, and counties, as countries, especially including an official notary seal impression. You know, he just talked about the appearance and how the tradition of it all, you know, that this kind of is a self-explanatory thing, is that the whole act of making the stamp and making it look official increases the validity of the document. And when someone gets it across state lines or across county or country lines, that whole optical piece is important, that things be done just so. The next section, he talks about the notary should complete a thorough notarial certificate, including the venue, date, type of notarization, document signer's name, method of identification, notary signature and seal, and other data. Here's the issue. I got to go back and do some redacting, because clearly the ID serial number is not something that we need. And from what I need to go back and make sure I read in my primer for sure, but the ID number on the driver's licenses that I've been taking, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing that. So yeah, I'll be on that. Anybody doing that in their state? Or I know Texas, Sunset Ray, y'all can't, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
We just put Texas driver's license and expiration, I believe.
Okay,
that's it.
Yeah. Another piece is the date in your certificate. The transactional document may have one date. That notarial certificate's date should always be the date that the notarization is taking place. Have you guys run into any challenges with that those of you who are doing the loan signings?
No, I haven't.
Okay, especially like in the case of like the HELOCs or the refis, 3-day right of rescission, and sometimes docs are printed on one day and the signing occurs. So as long as, whatever the case may be, the notary's job is to make sure that date on that certificate is the present date, regardless of what any other date says on anything else. That's the takeaway on that. Let's see here, the name of the document signers. Okay, so yeah, it is possible for a notary to notarize for more than one signer on the same transactional instrument, so long as the notary conducts a full notarial procedure for each signer. It's just important. I think we know that. That's not something that's, I think, was too much of a surprise for me. Anybody?
I have a question about when he speaks about details about the notarization. What are some details about the notarization that the rest of you typically include?
Definitely the type. If you're notarizing an acknowledgement or affidavit, the number of pages of the document, things like that.
I had a signer who had a shaky hand at the signing, and they were doing a loan modification. So I annotated that. I also annotated the last signing I did. We talked about the power of his Toyota Tundra, engine power. I have general conversations. I take a page out of Laura Buer's book. I don't ask questions. What day of the week is it? Who's the president? I just talk, and that's how I glean alertness and competence in that regard. You know how we have to make sure that somebody is mentally alert and aware. So in having those conversations, it helps me, and it also gives me that little nugget to put into my journal entry. And so that's kind of an example. So like, you know, just anything. And in the video, the NNA video that Professor Closen and Kelsey Cannon did, they made reference to a journal entry that they could smell the garlic on someone 5 feet from 5 feet away. Now, they put that in their journal entry. Is it ever going to become relevant? I don't know. Maybe not, but it's such a specific thing. It goes to the fact that yes, that person was present and that notary was very detailed in observations. So, you know, just little things like that sometimes are, and you don't have to worry about it being neatly done. You know, if you need to write it alongside the lines, then get it in, especially if it's a unique piece of information. Anybody got anything else? We kind of just talked about the next several pieces of that. We just talked about the next several topics, which is the method of identifying the signer. Clearly, the notary should indicate the document, and we talked about it here, not using the ID information. I'm sorry, not using the serial number information. We just talked about mental competence and willingness, description of notarial act. Okay, so we're good, I think, on that part. All right, what happens if the notary makes a mistake? Okay, yes. What happens if a notary makes a mistake? What are you guys doing in the event that you are making a mistake on the certificates?
I would just provide a new certificate instead of.
Yeah, I made a copy of the original document we started over the other day because I made the mistake. It said county of, and I wrote Tennessee. And I was like, really? We were going, this is supposed to be a 10-minute thing. Now I got to walk all the way down the hall, make a copy, come back. So I could have done a mark through, initial, and date. However, it just makes more sense to go ahead and start again if you do have a blank that you can work from. What I didn't do, which is what Professor Closen suggests, is on that document that I made the mistake on, I should have shredded. I should have taken that document and shredded it. I didn't. I let him have it. It only had that one piece of information. There was no stamp, there was no seal, but moving forward, I'll make it a best practice to, if there is a document that I make a mistake on, to go ahead and secure that document and shred it, you know, after the fact. Anybody have anything on that? The big thing is the mistakes. The key is reasonable care. Little bitty mistakes aren't necessarily going to make a notarization, you know, get thrown out to the wolves. But you have to, you know, overall be trying to do the right thing in your conducting of these notarial ceremonies. So I just got that it's important to, if you can make it a clean as possible notarization, great. If you can't and you do make a mistake, it's probably not going to be the end of the world. Like say, for instance, in the notarial certificate, you misspell the signer's name. What he says is the signer's signature is on the transactional document, and something like that, a misspelled name is probably not going to be that big of an issue. However, you just want to avoid those types of things at all costs. And his advice was to proofread, proofread, proofread. And I sent out an email yesterday and I sent dates out and I put 2021 on all the December dates, and it's not even 2021 yet. And that just goes to show you how, as humans, we're going to make those types of mistakes. But when we're doing these notarial ceremonies, it's going to be especially important in that notarial certificate to stop, drop, and reread. You know, just kind of look over it again, look over your journal entry again, and not necessarily be so in a hurry to get that person out of your sight. Because if you're in a hurry to get them on, or if they're in a hurry to move on to do what they have to do, you might not proofread and you might miss something. So that's something I took away from that section. Your signers, when possible, should be signing on the same page that your notarial certificate is on. Did you guys pick that up? And can somebody explain why?
Because if you're signing on one page, let's just say the pages are split, that certificate is split up, they can try to use your seal and attach it to, I guess, anything else and utilize it in a fraudulent way. It is preferred for all of the writing, the seal to be complete on one page.
That's right. And in the event that you need to attach a loose certificate, this is something that I always wondered about. How are you doing that to make sure that they don't slip that certificate on another document? So he specifies in chapter 7 on top of page 95, a conscientious notary or a conscientious and diligent notary should take steps to protect document security by attaching the notarial certificate to the transactional instrument in such a way that its removal and or substitution will be evident. This is not a paper clip. So now I got to go get me a little stapler.
Staple. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I was wondering, in these loan documents that have to be scanned back, are these notaries, if they do use or utilize a loose certificate, are they, after they do the scan, stapling that loose certificate to the document? Lydia, you got something?
If I may interject, with the certificate itself, you can put, like, if you have a loose leaf certificate, you're putting the type of notarization or the type of document that you're notarizing. So if it's an affidavit or something like that, there's a place on our certificates to where you can make a reference and it'll ask you how many pages. That's probably where I would use the embosser on, like, if something is split and it's 3 pages, right, and have them initial 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3 to make that certificate complete.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So yeah, so the certificate does allow for you to identify the document, making it less likely that it could be used in a fraudulent way. And then additionally, you're going to start using the embosser. So, okay. You brought up another good point, and that's the initials on the bottom of the page. We can't do that. Like you said, you would have the signer do that, but that's something I didn't know that we could do, right? I didn't know that we could say, hey, look, I need you to put these page numbers on the bottom of the page and initial each page. And they can refuse it, and we don't have any control over whether they do it or not. But that's just an extra fraud prevention step that we have the power to guide as the notary public. But the big piece is the evidence of tampering. So, in a non-loan signing situation, or maybe even a loan signing situation, it's going to be my best practice that if I have to do that loose certificate piece, even with that extra language being on the certificate that indicates that goes with that document, I'm still stapling that joker, because I'm covering, after I do a scan, obviously, I'm going to cover my butt, okay? So that, and I'm making a notation in my journal, secured with a staple or something like that, just because it's just an extra layer of protection. And if for whatever reason I ended up in a courthouse or courtroom and Professor Closen is the expert and he says, oh, she stapled it, he would know that in the totality of things, I'm one of those notaries who's trying to do the right thing. So yeah.
I got a quick question. Back to something you said originally, that you had a signing and you had 4 original documents that had to be notarized. I just want to clarify, you had 4 separate certificates that went with each.
Correct.
Okay, I just want, because I know you did 1 entry and you said, you filled it out and you said it was done 4 times. I just want to make sure you have 4 separate certificates.
Yeah, I did. Good question. It was a limited power of attorney for a vehicle from Capital One. It was a 1-page form. Each of them was just 1 page, and the certificate appeared at the bottom of each. And he was just verifying the VIN, mileage, or something. It was a real simple, quick thing. but that certificate was at the end of each. So yeah, they were all individual certificates. Anybody else? Okay, for those of you who have joined the call, we are actually reading Professor Closon's Notary Best Practices. We're doing chapters 7 through 10, and 7 was kind of thick and 10 is kind of thick. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep it moving. We're just about done with 7. And so what we're doing is we're just discussing what we've learned out of each chapter. And in the chat window, you'll notice a link to a Google form. That's the place where if you're participating in this book club, you can go and put your takeaways, things that you're gonna be implementing in 2021. And at the end, once we're done doing this reading of the book, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a big document at the end that all of us who have participated by submitting our recommendations is gonna get a copy of. So even though you may not have either started on the book or haven't been participating in the book club to this point, go ahead and get your book on order, because it's a 30 chapter book. So we'll probably be reading it for the next several weeks. And if you want a copy of that master document, be sure to go ahead and start to use that form to upload, your takeaways so that you can get a copy of it at the end of the book club. Chapter 8, Notary's Official Seal. Who wants to lead this one off? We kind of already started talking about it, and let's just get the elephant out the room. I got 2 seals. How many do you guys have?
I just have one.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I just have one.
Okay. Yeah, I got 2 only because after I ordered the first one, a really good friend of mine was like, that one's probably not going to be as reliable. I've heard some bad things about it, and you probably want to get you one just as a backup. And I didn't even think to even refer to my primer to see if I could or couldn't. I just ordered it, right? And it was okay. But when I read this chapter, I was glad that I did. It is prohibited in some states. Again, check your state's law, read your primer on what the rules are. But Professor Closon described when he was a notary in Illinois that he had a stamp at his office and he had a stamp at his home. And either way, they're supposed to be kept under your control, under lock and key.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I read this chapter. And again, I'm notary for my job, and I'm kind of expanding that. But I mean, anybody had access to my stuff because I left it on my, whatever you call it, not on my desk, but on my shelf or whatever. I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't know that people try to take expired seals. That's why you're supposed to deface them when they get expired. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh.
There is a lot. And you know what? You're not alone. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of employee notaries that just have it in a drawer somewhere and anybody can get to it. And he makes reference to that. So, and then the whole people, that sell them at the, yard sales? I'm like, who does that? You're supposed to, you're selling, you can get a notary stamp. And if I was a criminal, let me tell you, I would be good, okay? Because let me find a notary stamp at a yard sale. But fortunately, I'm not a criminal, okay? So, all right, let's see here. The notary should obtain an official notary seal, we already talked about that. Oh yeah, he talks about not using your notary seal in conjunction with any kind of endorsement or political or anything. You gotta be real careful on that kind of thing. And, he says the notary should affix a notary seal impression to each notarial certificate for every document notarization, regardless of whether required by law. So he equates it to the badge of a police officer and the stethoscope of a doctor in the book. That's your tool. And you need to use it when you're conducting these acts of being a public official. So, and really the big theme is we are responsible. We are the last line of fraud prevention in a lot of scenarios, especially when we start talking about wills and doing signings in nursing homes and medical facilities. Oh, the example he gives. Oh, anybody have anything that they wanted to touch on? What about when you have a smear on your seal? Have you guys ever had that? I'm going to show you something too that I found. And it was very interesting because I noticed that someone had done a notarization and they had, I want to show you guys this and to see if you.
All right, what you talking about for today?
Period.
Oh,
No,
Julie, you're on.
everything
I
that-
need you to mute. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to try to do this as best I can. And okay. Cover up as much as I can here. Okay. I'm going to show you guys something. I want you to tell me what you think. You see that? Seal. What do you think about that seal?
It looks like it's over top of print of some sort.
Or it's cut off or something.
Well, it's folded at the top, so that's my fault. So it's really, it's whole, but the bigger piece is, in the book, he talks about that nothing should appear, this seal, once you make your impression, should not be over the top of anything, and nothing should be over the top of it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And now I've got notary eye. I'm calling it notary eye, because anytime I see a notarization, I'm, and when I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's not what you're supposed to do. And I know what she was trying to do. She was trying to prevent fraud by making sure her signature was over the top of the seal. But according to the book, you're not supposed to do that. You need a clean seal, because the key is whoever gets this document needs to be able to clearly see your seal's mark. They don't need to have to decipher something between you written over it or it's over top of some other print on the document. It needs to be very clear in a space that is not, in what is the word I'm trying to say? You just want to make sure it's not on top of anything else. So when I saw that, I was like, ooh wee. So I'll leave that. What was that?
Was it uninhibited?
Uninhibited. That's the word. That's what I was looking for. Real quick, this case, I love how he throws these cases in here that he's been consulting on. This is important. This is why it's important to proofread. On page 113, he talks about the bank giving a bank notary, notarizing documents for this construction company guy who went and was going to put a bid in for this job. And the notary did everything perfect except the 6th seal. She missed that. And in doing so, the gentleman lost the bid. He would have otherwise won. So even though she was doing her best and she just made a human mistake, her E&O got tapped because he lost that bid and the financial damage was clear, and it was about $100,000. So he came back, sued the bank and the notary. So even though we might be doing everything else right, and we make one mistake, it still, guys, can be financially destructive to us. So proofreading is very, very, very important on these. I'm probably gonna be a slow notary when it comes to these loan signings. I am just gonna probably have to adjust my pricing. I'm not gonna be rushing through and end up messing up something, and then somebody's rate lock or whatever, and they come after my end. I just feel like it's just too important of a process for our impetus to be speed.
Right.
I'm not trying to do 20 a day, because you can't sit up here and tell me that you're doing 20 loan signings a day and ain't made no mistake.
Right.
You just can't tell me that. I'm sorry. Okay, so next, moving on. We talked about you shouldn't sell your notary seal, people, okay? When you get done with it, step on it, smash it, do whatever, burn it up. Don't sell it. And you need to have some type of instructions to your heirs should you pass away of what needs to happen with it too, right? Keeping it under the lock and key. Anybody have anything on that? I think I heard somebody.
Is this the chapter where it talked about stamping it putting this your stamp inside of your journal, like maybe in the front of it for a reason, but I can't remember why he said do that.
Oh, because that is so good. I'm so glad you brought that up, because he says if you have an example of what your notary seal looks like, if it's stolen, then you have a reference.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and that's something, I'm so glad you brought that up, Kia, because when I read that, I was like, it was 2:00 in the morning. I was gonna get up and go stamp the inside of my notary journal, but I couldn't because it was cold, and my notary journal is under lock and key, but it is in my car. So I wasn't gonna get up and go outside and do it, but that's a very good point. You should, in your journal, make a stamp using your seal. That way, if something happens to your seal, you have to obviously report it to the Secretary of State, your governing authority as far as that goes, your county or whatever, and to the popos. You gotta make a police report. It's serious. This is just so much. Is it me or is this a lot?
It's a lot.
A whole lot.
Okay. So that great point. So we've already kind of talked about, what happens when your commission is terminated or expired. You need to destroy that thing. You cannot and should not give your notary seal to the employer who made your notarization, who paid for it. That's not, no, it's yours. It's got your name on it. You're responsible for it. If you leave or whatever, you take all that with you, right? That's not theirs to keep. So that's very important to remember. All right, that was it on chapter 8. Moving on into chapter 9, personal presence. Here we go with this.
I don't know. To me, that's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah. But, we talked about this we had a little post in the group yesterday about, when is it okay for the signer to not be present? But I'm with you. It's a no-brainer. You can't be there. There's a problem. I'm not going to get all into these subscribing witnesses and all of that. It's just, that's too much. Does the law allow for me to be able to do that? Yes, but no. And these window signings with COVID, no. You can't sit outside and conduct a signing and that person not be present. What did you guys think about the wife with the husband and the boyfriend in the closet?
What?
Yes, child. Did you see that?
No, I don't know about it. What?
Okay, well, there was a case he referenced where the notary showed up to do a notarization at her husband at a lady's home. Her husband was terminally ill, and what happened is the wife brought the ID for the husband to the notary, who was waiting in the living room, and the paperwork, the notary gave the wife the paperwork, and she walked it down the hallway and supposedly had her husband sign it. It was a transfer of some money, and apparently the person who signed it was the boyfriend who was waiting in the closet. And how it all came out was the children from a previous marriage challenged the whole situation, challenged the notarization, saying that the woman, that their dad didn't sign it, that she had somebody tucked away in the closet and he signed it. So the point was, if you're out of the line of sight, you're not getting nothing notarized with me. Like, you want to make sure that notarization is conducted in your line of sight, that no one can be in a different room. You can't just be in the same building. You've got to be physically present with that person, because he talks about not only being able to see their signature, but their affect, and whether or not, you have so many other different, physical clues to look at.
Right. How do you even know if that person is willing? If the person is willing.
That's it. Willingness, mental clarity, alertness, all those things can be deduced just from being in the physical presence of someone. And if you allow that scenario to happen where you're in the house with the signer, so he's technically present, but presence has a different set of meanings when you're doing a notarization. Physically present, able to see, line of sight for the duration of the ceremony. Big takeaway there. let's see here. The notary should understand the importance of personal presence, and we just talked about that. Personal physical presence of the notary for every notarization. He talks about that some states allow this whole subscribing witness, but he does not like it. Not with him. Yes. And that case that I referenced is going to be on page 129. All right. Anybody else have anything out of chapter 9? One thing that's evidence of the signer's presence is that thumbprint. Some states let you do it, some states don't. I do it. My state lets me. If someone was to refuse, I can't refuse the notarization. However, I've not had that happen. I just make it seem like it's a part of the deal, and I make sure I get it. But there are some states that have passed laws against, retaining any biometric data. That's what they refer to it as, where he refers to it in the book. And if you do take it, if you do get biometric data, then it's up to you as a notary to make sure you protect it. So if ever I have a subpoena where my journal is, requested by public officials, I'm going to make a make a notation. I'm going to protect that. Only thing I can think of is covering them up with, Post-it notes or something, because once that book is out of my hands, I can't keep them from uncovering those thumbprints. But what I can do is make a entry, because when you have a request for your journal, you still need to make sure you make an entry in your journal that's happening. And at that time of that entry, I would be indicating that, fingerprints have been, covered or something like that. I'll make some kind of note that I was trying to keep their information covered. Anybody have any questions or any comments on that? I'm just answering a question in the chat. It's called Notary Best Practices by Professor Closen, Rolando. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 10. He did talk on webcam and remote online notarizations, and he referred to the next edition of this book probably having a little bit more in the way of presence, with the presence rule with that, because there are, obviously Ron is thing now, and electronic notarizations are a thing now. So there has been a lot of development with those two areas of notarizations, I'm sure, since this book was published. So just lean on your state's laws. And I know some of those states' laws are still not as great as we would like when it comes to Ron and all of that. But just know that being physically present when you're doing a notarization with that signer is extremely, extremely important. Chapter 10 goes into the identifying of the document signers. Anybody want to start us off with that? There are 3 ways that you can identify a signer he talks about. One is through personal knowledge, one is through credible witness, and one is through the satisfactory government ID, government issued photo ID that is not expired or hasn't expired within the last 5 years, depending on what your state allows for you to accept. How did he feel about credible witnesses? What did he feel about the best mode of ID? Did you guys pick up on that? He prefers 2 forms of ID. Like, he takes it there. Like, at least one, but he says that every adult should have at least 1 form of ID, and if you don't feel good about it, you need to accept a second one, even if you know that person, he says. He says it's the best practice to get into just the habit of making sure that you ask and request an ID from the signer every single time, and not to rely on personal knowledge. When your journals are complete, you will have a track record of having asked for every signer. The ID and expiration date will be in the journal entry, and it will go to your character as a notary of exhibiting, reasonable care in identifying the signer every time. If you've got journal entries that lack an ID reference and it just says, you do the personally known by me and all that, to me, from what he's saying, that is not as strong of a body of evidence on your behalf. Yeah, you can do it, but if your journal as a whole was taken into account and you're in court and he's trying to see how do you do things on a regular, and he doesn't see that reference to the type of ID and or the expiration date, that could be a bad thing. He actually even mentions that, just going and putting driver's license, that's not good. He's seeing that and he says that's not good, because how do we know that you actually looked at the driver's license if you didn't notate the type of driver's license, what state it was, and the expiration date? So that's an important note that I took away. We're not FBI agents. We're not going to be able to tell whether an ID, we can look at it, but we're not experts in the validity of the ID. Some of them are going to be more obviously fraudulent than others. However, I was pleasantly surprised and happy that he made note that, hey, look, you do the best you can do in identifying the signer with the ID that they provide you, annotating the ID type and the expiration date. But if somebody is on something and they're trying to get over on you, they're probably smarter at you than that. So you may not be able to catch it, but the way that he explains things is that as long as you're doing your best in identifying the signer, from identifying the signature on the ID and matching it with the journal entry signature and the transactional document signature, looking at the ID, looking at the, he says age and hair and weight and all those things can change. So you can't rely upon the physical picture looking like the person, but all you can do is your best, and making sure that you make sure the type of ID and the expiration date on that ID is in your journal entry is going to be very, very important.
I thought this was interesting. Didn't he say something about you can use an ID that has expired up to 3 years?
Yeah, he said.
I didn't know that.
He said something about I think it was 5 years on one. Let me see here if I can find it real quick.
And then the other thing was if a person has changed genders, there was something in there about that too. I thought that was, I need to look at that one again, because there's something that an update that they're doing in case a person has changed genders, but I don't remember specifically what.
That is so true. We have got to sit there for a second. I'm trying to find that reference to the years. It's either 3 or 5. I can't remember, but if the document ID is expired, definitely know what your state law says about being able to accept it as proof of identity, and know that there's some, in the environment that we're in with COVID, there have been some extensions and things like that granted as well. But to speak on what Kia just brought up, which is very important, if the signer is transgender and the ID doesn't match, usually that's not going to be an issue from what he's saying. He says most of the time when someone's going through the transition, they have that all that has been worked out, right? But in the event that it's not, and there's some discrepancy there, it's, you just have to do your best. Like, I'm trying to see here, what does he say? Let's go to that particular section. Again, he said something about asking for 2 IDs, especially with elderly signers. Okay, transgender signers.
Page
Notary,
146.
Yes, 146. Transgender signers. Notaries should seldom encounter any issues resulting from the performance of notarizations for transgender signers. Indeed, notaries should rarely be aware that a signer is a transgender person, and notaries should not ordinarily ask the signer about his or her gender. Notaries should always conduct themselves in a professional and respectful manner. The gender of the signer is not ordinarily a relevant issue in a notarization, even if a signer volunteers information revealing the transgender status. However, if a signer's name, gender designation, or photograph on the signer's ID does not appear to match the apparent gender of the signer, then the issue of the signer's identity must be addressed by the notary. Okay, so yeah.
Right, because you can't have a driver's license and have Stephanie, but there's a appearance of a gentleman sitting in front of me.
Right.
That's a direct, like, how do you handle that conversation, or what do you say?
You know what? That's a
I
good
don't think the
question.
notary world has prepared itself for that.
I agree.
I would have
Like,
to agree.
Mr. Ma'am, what do I address you as? Your driver's license is female. The appearance is male. Obviously, I'm not going to say that, but like, how
And
does that conversation go?
that must lend itself to the documentation in the journal. I guess.
Yeah, but what about the criteria that you have to identify? The person doesn't look like the driver's license. It's a female on the driver's license. It's a male sitting in front of you. You can document that over to the side, but how are we as notaries making that match? And making that match to say we have properly identified this person to be XYZ.
Right. I wish Liz Head was on this call.
I would think, this is just me talking, I could be wrong, but I would think that the conversation wouldn't be as difficult as we think it would be, only because I'm sure they've been asked that question before, in terms of, because when you think of a transgender person, they've gone through the changes physically, so they've probably been asked that question several times. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's proper. Go ahead.
They may automatically bring it up because they may know it may be difficult for us, but I'm just saying, in the event, they might just sit there like, I am who I am. Like, can we get this started? Can we get this paperwork done, please?
Right. Go ahead, Damien.
No, I was just thinking, because my thought is like, okay, if it's Phil in front of you, but he's Paulina, you can't really confirm that Phil is Paulina.
Right.
You can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
you
just gotta.
yeah.
I'd have to ask. I'm like, excuse me, Phil. You presented me with an ID that says Pauline. I just want to make sure that I understand. Did something? Can you explain this to me? You know what I'm saying? I would probably start that way, and
Exactly.
I mean, what else do? You have you have no other choice.
Kia, that's a good point, because I remember the last time we had to call Liz's advice on something like that, or not on this topic in particular, but when we don't know, it's just to ask questions. And that would be a good way to do it, is just to say, how can you explain that to me? Because that's all we can do, really, and then make those notes in our journal entry. So, but definitely something that I'm glad you brought up, and I'm glad he put it in the book, because it's definitely going to be something that we're going to be seeing. So, and he said some states have even gone to the point of changing their IDs so that there is, oh no, not IDs, but it says to date, a few U.S. jurisdictions have modified their driver's license and ID procedures, yes, to permit bearers to indicate other than the usual female or male choice. They can actually mark an X in the gender box or select non-binary. So on some state IDs, there will be some indication of that, but not all states have gotten to that place, I don't believe. So,
and Monica, this is what the question that we were talking about earlier. It's on page 144, where it talks about the expired IDs. It says, I'm sorry, 144. At the top, it says fewer than 5 years.
Fewer than 5 years. Okay, gotcha. And then obviously everybody always go check what your state says, because state law is gonna, and he talks about that too, Professor Close, and always refer to your state law on everything. He's again given a tip of asking for 2 IDs. And I thought about the closings that I've been in on as a real estate broker, and they always ask for 2 IDs. So, it's okay that if you're doing some general notary work, to grab that license or whatever, but if I'm doing more complex stuff, I'm getting 2 IDs. And I'm also on the elderly. I'm not, if you don't have your ID, sometimes he pointed out that some of the elderly signers maybe don't have their ID, maybe they stopped driving or something like that, but you still have to have the ID of an elderly signer. So you got to make sure you vet that appointment prior to, and make sure that they have what they need so that you can properly identify them. There are, you should note the ID document, the month and year of expiration, and we know that. Proofread.
Quick question. As
Yes.
far as the ID, everybody goes to either, I guess, the driver's license or state ID. If a person has a driver's license and we want 2 forms and they don't have a passport, they don't have a state ID, what other form of identification are you requesting?
I hadn't gotten that far yet because I don't
Okay.
know. That's a good question. Because you're right, most people are just going to have that driver's license. You can't use a credit card. It doesn't have a photo. Some of those other IDs that you would ask for aren't necessarily going to work because they have to meet that identification requirement. Photo ID and some other demographic data. And a credit card or a Sam's card or that kind of thing, won't necessarily give that to you. So good point. I don't know what that second ID. I'm going to have to definitely do some research on that. And I'm not, like I say, as much concerned about it right now because I'm just doing the general notary work. But, hey, when I start doing this heftier stuff, especially the wills and the trusts and the commercial stuff, yeah. And when the reverse applications, I'm not so much concerned about because there's no notarizations, but the reverse closings with my elderly people, making sure that they do have a valid ID or, that I can use that ID document that they do have. It's going to be very important for notaries to, when they get in those spaces, to pre-qualify the appointment by making sure these questions are asked ahead of time.
Right.
So that's it. That was it. That was the end of chapter 10. This coming up Saturday, I kind of still wanted to go ahead, I know it's going to be after Christmas. Still want to go ahead and get our little hour in to keep pushing because we got 30 chapters to get through. And I worry that if we miss a week that we're going to be reading this thing till February sometime, and I want to get to another book. So are you guys okay with that? Or would you guys rather not have discussion Saturday?
I'm fine.
I'm
Me
available.
too. It pushes me to keep reading, so I'm
Exactly. Y'all know if I do not have this next Saturday, I'm gonna be behind because I did it again this week. I was up to 4:00 this morning reading, and I got my reading in. So, but I think I want to stretch us just a little bit and do 11. Do I want to do this? I don't want to do this. I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna be the main one struggling on the struggle bus. So we're gonna go ahead, Sister Ray.
Were you trying to do 11 to 15?
I was going to. What you think?
I didn't look. I didn't look because I was
Let's
up
go
this morning.
for it.
Okay.
Let's go for
good.
it.
Are y'all for real? 11 through 15?
I know, right? Look at Dave talking about, let's go for it. Okay, well,
Right.
guess what? I'm gonna be calling
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's
Read
good.
it together so I can do it. I might need to do that anyway. Let's see here. They don't look too bad. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
What we can do is take a chapter a piece.
Make it a group project.
Right.
No, you're right. We gotta read it, and then because we each have to pull, because we all each gonna pull something out that's gonna be different, I think.
Yeah.
In the chat before we go, know that the link is in there. And like I say, add your takeaways, one takeaway from each chapter of something that you're going to be implementing in 2021. And again, all of that data I'm going to put into a master document at the end of this, and you will get a copy if you submit some questions. So that link is in the chat window right now. Do you guys know how to save the chat?
No.
All right, so the way you save the chat, and I'll show my screen. I don't know if it'll share it. But anyway, when you open up the chat, the bottom right-hand corner, there's 3 dots. Click on those 3 dots. And then once you click on those 3 dots at the top, it'll say Save Chat.
Okay, I'm on my phone. Sorry.
Okay, let me send this. I'm going to send the link to you in the chat. Oh, you're on your phone, so you probably can't get. Are you able to open up the chat at all, Sasaray?
At the bottom of my screen, I just see share screen participants. I see the 3 dots, but the 3 dots just says meeting settings, minimize meeting and virtual background. Oh,
Okay,
wait,
so,
chat. I see the chat. My bad.
Okay.
I see.
So what I'm doing, and just in case, Sasaray, I'm going to go ahead and just shoot you an email with it because I got your email pulled up. And so it'll be in that. I'm sending you an email with the form that you can use to submit your takeaways.
Okay.
Club form.
Yeah, because I was on my way. I'm like, let me pre-stamp all of these certificates and sign everything before I get to this meeting. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
obviously I can't do it,
Right.
or not supposed to.
Right. And that's why this book is so good, because I think a lot of people, even people who've been doing this for a long time, you know, can learn something from reading this book. Like, I'm surprised it's not. That's the thing with this industry. There's no, like, I'm a broker, so we have required continuing education credits that we have to obtain, and even hairstylists have to go back and get continuing education. And it just is surprising to me that there's no structured continuing education programs for notary publics. Notaries public, I'm sorry. That's the correct plural. So it just, I don't know, it's very important to get your stuff in, even though the state doesn't require it, federal government doesn't require it. Because, I mean, we've learned so much here that that I know people are not doing. And I can only imagine, you know, these six-figure earners, you can't tell me. The law of averages is on the side of you can't tell me that some of this stuff ain't being done right. But I'm going to be quiet and leave that alone. That's not my ministry. So,
Monica, where did you order your book? I'm looking on Amazon and it says it's currently unavailable.
Oh, yes. That's because it's only available at the NNA website.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. And from one, I don't know, a week or so, somebody said that it was out of stock. So see if you can still get it on the NNA website. I think it was like $30. But if I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't have spent all this money I've spent on all these different loan signing courses. I ain't done a loan signing to the first, and I'm not mad at it, because I can sleep at night, because I know if somebody comes and knocks on my door, it's not because I screwed somebody's loan signing up. Okay.
But another something that's very irritating, you have these signing services out here that's giving you, as the notaries, instructions, or the loan signing agent instructions on these what I call blind notarizations, like you said, the window, what do you call it, the window signings and stuff like that. My thing is if you let them know, hey, my state law requires, or you know, it's mandated that I be present, they're just gonna assign it to someone else. My thing is do the lenders and title companies know that this could possibly fall back on them, and it could fall through because you didn't have proper notarizations? So whereas you want to skip over me, I'm going to educate our lenders and our title companies on, you know, basically the criteria of what's happening. I'm just saying.
No, you're right, Spencer Ray. You are absolutely right. And they don't really care. Like, because it's not about that for them. It's about getting that loan closed. The motivation.
But it's also about the liability of it, because if those borrowers come back and say, well, I didn't sign that. Okay, you approved me for $235,000. I'm really not tied to it because they're improper notarization. And it's going to, it could possibly unravel. Those clients could possibly get out of that, and they're stuck holding the bag looking stupid because they didn't have things in place.
You just gave me chills, because that is so true. And you just have to wonder how many, I mean, we saw it in the robo-signing debacle of 2007, 2008. Hello, real estate crash. Hello.
Right.
We saw it. They just got from up under that, you know, settlement, all that stuff expired not too in the recent past from all of that. So to your point, yes, the liability is just ridiculous, crazy. And some of the instructions, even the instructions I got on the loan mod, you know, I was just looking at it, I was like, gosh, this is a lot, you know, because the signing service wants you to do it a certain way, and the title company wants you to do it a certain way, and they could give two blanks and a blank, okay, about your state's law. And the bottom line is this: when you're watching this back, whoever's watching this, nobody can know. It comes back on you. I can't say it more clearly. No matter that you're doing a $250 signing and you want to get in the good graces of this title company and you want to be their direct and you want to do this and you want to do that, they are not going to protect you if something goes wrong. If somebody comes after your house, like Kelsey Cannon and Professor Closen said in that video when they were talking about the 59-year-old lady who lost her house, okay? You can't start over in your career at 59 and buy another house. Not easily. The boss that was doing the fraudulent stuff didn't care about her, okay? These title companies, they don't care about you when it comes to that. They care about you getting the signing back, like they said, to get it back, and the lender getting it so that the title company can stay in good graces with the lender. You have to be the own shield of your own business when you're out here doing these notarizations. And don't think for a hot second that you're out here skating and ain't nothing gonna happen. Because the more at bats you get, the more time, the more possibilities of something happening. And I don't know about statute of limitations because I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you this: you've got to keep your notary journal for forever until you die, or you turn it into your Secretary of State. Say something happens 10 years from now, you're done being a loan signing agent doing this, and this. And there was a slew of things that you did unbeknownst to you that weren't supposed to be done. Guess what? Make sure your stuff is protected. Make sure you got your assets hidden, okay?
Make sure your assets in somebody else's name.
Okay? Make sure you got some trust, because while you out here balling out of control, running it up, 6 a day, 10 a day, 11 a day, baby, please, you can have that, because no. I'm not trusting notarial certificate verbiage anymore. I'm reading it. I'm taking my time because I need to know that my certificate is okay with the state of Tennessee. So keep your eyes and ears open, folks, especially when it comes to those signings that are for properties in different states, lenders in different states. You better know your stuff because it's coming back on you. And with that, I'm going to go get me some coffee. Anybody else have anything?
What time will book club be beginning next Saturday?
9 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Awesome.
Yes. I'm so glad you guys gave an hour. We went a little bit over this morning. I'm so glad, you guys are participating in this. It was really helping me get through the book, because I can tell you I wouldn't be reading it for real if it wasn't for you guys. So anybody else? Anything before we go? That's it? All right, you guys have a great Saturday. Kia, did you have something?
I was just going to say, keep asking us those questions. I know you're super busy, but I love it when you ask us those questions pertaining to the information on Notary Nerds, because it helps us.
Okay,
Helps me.
cool. Yeah, I think I will start doing those. I think that's a good idea because it just keeps it fresh. And it's good to be able to see how many people don't know certain things. So, and that's a safe place to be able to learn it, because I don't know everything, and I'm not going to ever act like I do. So I will do that. Keep those questions coming. All right, guys, you guys have a great morning.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.